Good evening, everyone. Welcome to ThetaTalks. It is Tuesday once again, and every Tuesday at 8:30 GMT plus 8, we are here live talking about different elements of theta healing. Our goal here is to give you more insight into what theta healing can actually do for you, because there are so many different layers, there are so many different aspects to it. So these weekly talks, we're here to give you more insight so that you will get to understand how cool theta healing really is and what you can use it for. We know that theta healing is all about clearing belief systems, clearing issues with what you've been hanging on to, which you may or may not realize, but there are lots of different facets and elements to it. How clearing a belief can actually shift and change your life. And today we are talking about fears. We are talking about phobias. So this is a very interesting topic, because I think this can actually be a two-section or a two-episode topic, because fears can really be expounded to so many different areas. You know, we can talk about the fear of something physical, like the fear of heights, or the fear of cockroaches, or the fear of snakes, the fear of the ocean. I've had a lot of clients who have that fear of dogs, or it could be the fear of failure or the fear of disappointment. So fears can have many different angles and facets, and today we're going to explore a lot more about our fears, and how, you know, some of us think that we have to live with it and we have no choice. And there's a lot of you up to the point that they learned or understood about theta healing, accepted that as the truth, that you had to live with your fears. There is no other choice. So we're here to give you another side of things, where there is an option to actually let go of these fears, so you no longer need to hang on to it, no matter what age you're in and no matter how long you've been keeping it.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I was just briefing everybody on our topic,
Okay, sounds
and
great.
it's fears and phobias today.
Yeah,
S-
absolutely.
So I have a really good story to tell to start off with,
Okay.
about fear. So fear is really something that is um, something that comes up very often in our
Mhm.
sessions, right?
Yeah,
You'd
with
be
clients for
surprised.
sure.
And it's something that shows up with, here's a fear I want to clear, or it could show up as something they want to have or create, and then there's a fear underneath that, right?
Hmm.
So I had
Hmm.
a session with a client who was actually one of my demo students in my basic class, and
Okay.
he had a fear of heights. Okay, and this is something that I've worked with a lot of people have this fear,
Yeah.
and she's been living with it at that point for years. She was already in her 40s,
Okay.
and she's had it since a very young age. And
Okay.
so it really impacted her, because, she can't get jobs where she has to fly. And every time
Mm.
her family wants to travel, it's like, she hesitates, or, in
Right.
tall buildings or bridges. And, she has to think twice. So when I did some belief work with her, so I did some theta healing with her,
Hmm.
what was very interesting was that we uncovered there were a few layers to it. There was something related to her father, and also she had like past life experiences where she did actually experience somebody pushing her off a building, so hence the
Okay.
fear was brought on by that
Yeah,
past
carry through
experience,
for sure. For sure.
and so, once we healed it and cleared it, and it just took 30 minutes, and I asked her, okay, so how do you feel? And I want you to close your eyes and imagine it. And she's like, oh, I don't feel any fear anymore. And at that point we were at the center and we were only on the 6th floor, so you can't really feel or sense. So she had to go out there and kind of test
Yeah.
for herself. So she
Yeah.
goes out to the Chakra
Balcony.
Cafe area.
The balcony.
Okay.
Did she
I
go
mean,
out onto
no,
the balcony?
no, because 6th floor wasn't really that high for her. I
Okay.
mean, it didn't kind of create that impact. So her husband was sitting there, and then she went up to her husband and said, "I'm not afraid of heights anymore." And guess what he responded with? He said, "Yeah, right." He didn't believe her, right? He was, utterly in disbelief. Yeah, he just kind of dismissed her actually. So then she said, "Let me show you." So they went home. They're on their way home, and she went on. I think it was C5 at that time, and there's this bridge that they usually, go past, and even the idea or the thought of getting on that bridge was kind of scary for her. So they stopped on the side, and then she got on that bridge. She even leaned over and she waved at him, right? And he was also like kind of like gawking in surprise. And then she was turning around to come back down the bridge. And he was like, "No, finish it, finish it." So he wanted to make sure that this fear was really
Was
not
gone.
there, right? And so she came down the other side. He picked her up from the other side. Then they went home to their teen kids. And she tells her kids, "Guess what? I'm not afraid of heights anymore." And they were like, also, "Yeah, right. I don't believe you."
Right.
So the reason I wanted to start with the story is because a lot of the times, we think that it is so hard or so difficult that you have to live with your fears. It's something that it's kind of inherent in you and you can't get rid of it. And seeing by the reactions of her family, they also feel this way, could, a 30-minute session or just in it's so fast it could clear. And it did, and she's still up to date. Still, she has no more fears of heights, and this is something that I've worked on very, very often. Like I mentioned, that this is a belief that comes up quite a bit.
Quite a bit.
So
Yeah.
it's nice I wanted to start off with saying or telling our audience that, you know what, if you think that your fear can be healed or cleared, that's an untruth, it's a myth. It is absolutely possible to
Yeah.
let go of
And
your
I'm actually
fears.
looking away. I'm looking away because I'm going into my session notes. I had a session today,
Okay.
right? And I had a client that I worked with last week. So she came back this week for her next appointment. I had a session with her last week, and I'm actually going to, actually quote what she said to me, that last week before our session, her level of anxiety, which was rooted in fear, was at a 10. So it
Mm.
was the highest she could ever imagine it could be. And that was in our session last week. And she said after the session, it went down to zero,
Wow. And
zero.
that's
And a week
within that
later,
session. Yeah.
yeah, and within that session, and a week later, she's still like at a zero. But she said there's still 2 to 3%, Sanaiyah, where I'm worried. She said 2 to 3% where I feel like my heart is beating a little bit
Mm.
fast. So, but she's so specific, 2 to 3%, which means it's that
Yeah.
low versus like a 10 out of 10 on anxiety levels
Mm.
pre-session last week. And then at the end of the session, it was at a zero and continued until this week. But the story I was thinking about, what am I going to talk about when it comes
Mm.
to fear today? And of course, conveniently, appropriately, synchronistically, a situation just happened 30 minutes ago.
Mm.
So, my 9-year-old son, right, he got really kind of sick with the flu 2 weeks ago, right? And he recovered. It took him a couple of days to recover. It was the flu. We actually did a test and made sure it wasn't COVID. It was the flu, but it was a regular flu, right? But he got really weak from the flu. I guess that's what happens. He felt like weak afterwards from the recovery, and he also talked about how he feels a little weird in his head since he's been sick, and he feels like a little confused and a little like just
Like
not
brain
himself.
fog, like a brain
Yeah, just
fog.
not
Yeah.
himself, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And he uses the word weird, right?
Of
And he
course, yeah.
feels there are like some weird thoughts in his mind, and he feels a little out of control, like he doesn't know why they're there, or like he's just feeling off. And I could tell, like, since he had recovered, that he wasn't just 100% there, and energy wise, physically, because he had a basketball game, and I could see he was not playing at 100%. But also, like, he didn't feel like he was completely recovered. Anyway, so we're chatting about it today, and he's been telling me for the last 3 days, this is how I feel today. This is why I feel. He's very, very communicative with me. And it's very normal in our family that if anything happens, he'll come straight to me and I'll do a healing. So it's very kind of like a conversation that seems very normal for us to have. Anyway, so today we were talking, and I've done a healing with him yesterday and the day before, just to balance him, do unconditional love, release whatever's going on for him. But it was still kind of coming back, this weird feeling. So today I said, okay, let's dig a little bit more, right? This isn't just him recovering from the flu. It's not, just your everyday thing, because it hasn't just released in a simple healing. I got to go a little deeper. So I started to talk to him, and I was like, so, is anything going on in school? Anything bothering you?
Mm-hmm.
Anything happen in the park? Anything happen with your friends? Trying to find if there's anything off, anything weird. Nothing. And he even had this thing happen in school, but he's like, no, not that, not at all. It's totally fine. Like, he was totally fine about that, whatever had happened. And then I was like, there must be something where you felt scared. Because what he told me is he's been feeling a little bit scared, right?
Right.
But we couldn't figure out what's the source. So I was like, anything that made you feel a little like shocked or scared, or, I gave him a couple of feelings based on what he had been telling me. And suddenly his like face got all like sheepish, like
Mm.
he remembered something. And I was like, okay, what happened? And he's like, you remember that day? So apparently my husband and him went to the park,
Mm.
and he rode the electric scooter.
Right.
And apparently on his way back, he was looking behind at my husband instead of facing forward while driving the scooter.
Mm.
And he hit the intersection of where we live in the
Right.
village. But he didn't look forward. He looked back, which we're always telling him to focus forward. But he looked back, and he didn't see that there was a motorbike coming with a
Right.
man and a woman behind. And apparently he was literally 5 centimeters away from being hit by this
Wow.
motorbike. And the woman sitting behind the guy riding the bike, screamed. And because of that, I think the man got a little startled. I think he wasn't looking either. And what my son did is he jumped off the scooter and walked a couple of steps forward and then jumped back on the scooter. But basically, he narrowly missed being hit.
Right.
And I remember that day my husband came back and he told me the whole incident and how his heart was beating so fast. And he was like in shock about what had just happened. And, I remember just trying to like calm my husband down. And we didn't think that the impact was so much greater on Suri. So it turns out from that day, and that happened right before he got sick. So now I understand
Mm.
the reason why he got the flu, right? The viral
Right.
flu was because he actually in that moment experienced extreme fear. And
Right.
his words exactly was, I was so scared, Mama. I
Yeah.
was so scared. And you know what he was scared about? He was scared that the man driving the bike and the one woman behind him would fall off and get hurt. And
Mm.
I'm like, how about you? How about you getting hurt? And he's like, yeah, me too. But like, what if they got hurt? And
Mm.
he was so scared by that narrow miss that it was like a total shock. And
Right.
he's been experiencing and reliving the fear
Wow.
underneath the surface
Which is why his
for
fever, I
his
remember you said
fever.
kept coming back and then going, like it was just
It was a
very,
very low grade fever.
wow.
It wasn't high enough for it to
Mm.
be really sick. Like, his symptoms weren't really high.
Right.
They weren't very strong, but when we did test him, he
Mm.
had influenza
Mm.
A, which is like
Mm.
common cold, a common flu. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But it wasn't like really bad, because I understand it was a fear that
Right.
was triggering his immune
Mm.
system to kind
Mm.
of react in that way. And I was like, did that motorbike incident, didn't it just happen before you got sick? And he's like, yeah, it was just, and we didn't connect the dots on
Right.
that because I just didn't see that connection. I guess I didn't pay attention to that at the time
Mm-hmm.
he got sick. I thought, he probably just picked it
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
from somewhere, but it was like very close to that incident, or maybe like a couple of days.
Right.
But that fear that was running in the background the whole time was why he's been feeling this way.
Right.
And he was genuinely scared
Yeah.
and terrified of what could have happened.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it was just like for him, the minute he realized, oh my God, that's what it's about, he just like, it felt like the fear left
Or
him.
the
Of course, I went ahead.
veil lifted. It's
Yeah,
like
it's
no.
like the clarity came. But
Yeah.
of course, I sat down. I cleared the shock and trauma from that
Mm-hmm.
incident. I taught him he's safe. And I taught him that he has learned now to be more careful. Like I asked him, what did you learn from that? And he said,
Yeah.
I learned to always look forward and never look backwards.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's a pretty good lesson to learn
Yeah.
and a very important one when you are living your life.
Yeah.
And I said, I taught him, like I was doing the theta healing, the things we do, and I was downloading that he knows how to be more careful, more responsible, to look forward, and that he's safe and secure and release all the shock and trauma, all these things that I was doing. And of course, he felt much better. And, like in my head, I was just thinking, what about all those moms who don't have
Mm-hmm.
these tools?
Yeah.
Right? Like I can help my son immediately. And I'm
Yeah.
always so grateful when I realize I have the tools to help my child. I don't feel helpless. Like there was a moment where I felt, oh my God, look at what my son is dealing with. And there
Mm.
was a moment of that, like, oh, like the poor
Yeah.
thing
I
has been
had to
struggling
hang
with it.
on. Yeah.
And then of course right away I'm able to help him, but that sense of at least I have the tools
Yeah.
to do something about it really like
Yeah.
it came up for me today, like what about people who don't have those tools?
Yeah.
Like what about people who can't understand what's going on with their child or doesn't know how to
Mhm.
help their child or like feels completely helpless because their child is going through something and they can't fix it, they can't stop it, they can't change it. So
A lot of these fears that we end up having or creating or taking on is actually from that, timeline, right? If our parents were afraid of dogs, let's say, then you will end up having this fear as well, right? Inherited. So I think, especially for that timeline or that age group, right?
what,
It's
wait, tell me again. I'm not.
as a child, it is very important to be able to work through this because once they inherit it, you have to really like then undo it versus having the tools and just clearing up right away. Like if
Okay,
you
wait. So,
hadn't,
okay, so let me get what you're saying. It's like because so let's take my son's situation. If I hadn't sat down today and cleared all that shock and trauma, he would have just suppressed it because he
yep.
doesn't know how to deal with it, right? And nobody around him would know how to deal with it. And this suppression add to that other suppressed feelings and emotions later on in life can turn out to be depression, anxiety, lack of self confidence, fear of life, or other kinds of
I mean, he
fears.
might not get on that scooter again.
Yeah,
It's as simple as that. Like at the end of the day, he might not want to go anything fast, or it can already be anchored in or with something relating to wheels, or you never know how a child may take it. And a lot of my clients, that's kind of how their fear started as children, right? I had a client who had a fear of cockroaches, right? And you would think cockroaches, huh? Isn't it just it's just icky and slimy and stuff?
my
But
husband, by the way, is totally scared of cockroaches, and he makes me kill them. Okay, and
so
I'm not exactly, so
So you
excited
need
about
to
seeing one.
you need to work on it with that. But the point is, it's not that you have to freak out and feel helpless and frozen, right? So when she was like a 10 out of 10 with the fear. So I was asking her, okay, so what could happen if there was a cockroach? And she said it could come fly and come close to me. Oh, and then what would happen? And maybe it would touch me and it'll have some germs or something and I would get sick. And her fear was she would get sick, she would go to the hospital, she might die. And that's not the end. A lot of the times we think our fear is in death, but it's not actually. And her fear was actually related to who will take care of my kids if something happened to me,
So
right?
the real fear is not the cockroach. The real fear is I will die and nobody will take care of my
Yeah,
kids.
or even deeper was I would fail as a mother.
Oh,
That was actually the
wow.
underlying that
That's
failure
deep.
feeling. And at the end of the day, you try to think back, hey, wait a minute, what was the fear again? Right? Because you just go so deep that you don't realize cockroaches and failure, how does that link?
Yeah.
But it's actually every time that person sees a cockroach, it's like your mind is so fast to travel to, oh, you could die and nobody's going to take care of your kids and you'll be a failure, right? It's gone super fast into that thought. And hence, that fear kicks in,
Yeah.
right? So
Totally.
it was really very interesting that a lot of, and that failure stemmed from childhood, right? Our mind is so good at kind of hiding all
Yeah.
these beliefs and kind of covering it up into fear and like no, 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 let's not go there,
Well,
right?
so crazy story is I used to be so terrified of dogs. Okay.
Mm.
And by the way, I have a dog now,
Yes, now, yeah,
but
yeah.
for the longest time, I was terrified. So I was dating this guy, and he loved dogs.
Mm.
And I remember if he like we would be like, this is such a deal breaker because I am terrified of dogs and he loves dogs. Like, how's
Mm.
this relationship ever gonna work?
Yeah.
So I remember there was that. And then there was another guy that I dated who also loved dogs. And I remember we went to visit his friend's house and his friend had these massive big dogs, and I remember
Not the cute small
not the cute
puppies that
tiny
you can kind
ones,
of
like
like
those big, like really scary ones. And I remember that, so he goes up the stairs and I was at the foot of the stairs and there's a dog like on the step, on this like ledge of the stairs, and I froze. I couldn't walk up. And afterwards, and then, he kept saying, come, come. And I was like I can't move. I was so terrified.
Mhm.
And we ended up having a fight about it. And of course, that was pretty much like,
Deal breaker
our
for
relationship,
him.
yeah, never went anywhere
He's
after
like,
that. But my
no,
point is
I
that
love
it
my
was so
dogs
bad
more.
that it was
Yeah,
getting in the way of my
yeah,
relationships, right?
yeah. So you
But
had to heal it.
it turned out the reason why I was terrified of dogs. So, by the time I moved to Manila, I think I did some work on my fear of dogs. And I I went back to a memory where there was my uncle's dog. His name was Smokey.
Mm.
It's our uncle's dog.
Mm.
And when I would visit every summer, where my mom grew up, which is in Jakarta in Indonesia, I would stay at my uncle's house and I would run around the house with Smokey. And I love this little dog, Smokey. He was like, just I just adored him. I would play with him over the summer. And apparently that summer I left and he got into a car accident. He was hit by a car and he died. And nobody ever told me that Smokey died. So when I came back the next summer to spend my summer holidays with my relatives, with my uncles, my cousins, and so on, that's when they told me that Smokey was hit by a car
Oh.
and he died. And I was so upset that nobody told me
Mm.
about it. And I was so, so devastated.
Mm.
And
Mm.
honestly, from that day forward, I was terrified of dogs. So it turns out that me being terrified of dogs, my fear of dogs, actually was covering up the grief of losing the dog I loved, and I didn't have the tools or the ability to grieve and understand that. So I created a fear so I would never love another dog and have to
Wow.
go through the pain of losing him
Mm.
and be as devastated as I was again. So my mind
Wow.
created a fear of dogs to protect me from ever getting attached to a dog again.
Wow. That's
Right? So
crazy.
a lot of times our fears, as you know, is our mind's way of protecting us from something
Mm.
that was uncomfortable or painful or so on. So we create a fear to kind of like keep us away from that situation.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
It
And that happens
protects
with,
us.
it protects us. And that's actually why a lot of people are single, because they have all these fears of actually being in a relationship, right? Of all the things that could go wrong. But the fear is protecting them of having to be in a relationship because there are probably a lot of traumatic, painful memories of associated with love or
Right.
relationships. That's so it's the same kind of thing. Like ultimately, our brain, our mind is always trying to protect us. And so it's important that we become aware of why we're holding on to fears. And of course, our fears are limiting us in so many different
Yeah.
ways. You can live your life constantly being in a state of fear, and then
Hmm.
you're going to play like defense.
Yeah.
But if you're, you know, coming from a place of love, it's like playing offense. Like you have
Mm.
the upper hand. You have the, you know, you're more likely to be on the winning team.
Yeah. And I had a client actually yesterday, who I just recalled now, had a fear that creeped up later on in life. So a fear doesn't have to be something that you've lived with many, many years and hung on to it. It could be something that all of a sudden or overnight you suddenly feared, something. For him, it was more about the fear of not being able to control the environment around him, and this is like if he takes long haul flights, he would feel anxious because of that, and he used to take it many times before, so I want to also bring that up and highlight that a fear can be something that could be just triggered, or it could be something that came up recently. It doesn't have to be something you've hung on to for years as well.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. We did say that this Theta Talks today is about fear and phobias. So we haven't really talked too much about or at all about the difference. So let's just also clarify that a fear usually has an object, like a source, something you fear, right? Whereas a phobia, well, actually, let me go back and correct what I said. A fear has an event, like a triggering event. There's a source, there's a reason why we fear something. But a phobia can make absolutely no sense,
Sense, yeah.
right? And often we've noticed in the work we've done that with phobias, the fear could be something that we have inherited from our
Mm,
ancestors, or it could be a fear of something that happened in a past life,
yeah.
right? And so that's what a phobia is. It's like
Mm,
a fear that doesn't actually have a source. It makes no sense. And it's usually a much more extreme reaction to some kind of like, in scientific terms, you would say a
yeah.
stimuli, right? But in more practical terms, it's like there's an object around which your fear is in reaction to, or
Yeah.
there's an object to which you react to with fear.
Mm,
But with phobias, it might be just something that doesn't make any
yeah.
sense. So you could have a phobia of flying, and you could have a phobia of water, and you've never drowned, and you've never been in a bad plane crash or a bad, plane ride, but you still have this fear. It makes absolutely no sense. But that could be related to something that happened another time and place.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Queen has a question asking for a friend. Is the fear of feelings a valid or considered a fear? I mean, anything that you feel fearful about or toward is a fear, right? Usually, when someone has a fear of feelings, they might have a fear of losing control.
Mm,
They might have a fear of vulnerability,
yeah.
and they might have a fear of feeling things that they aren't equipped to deal with, right? And it could be some emotional baggage from the past
Mm,
that is, or trauma likely that's connected to that. So it is pretty much a valid feeling. So yeah. Okay, virtue cards. I can see you kind of shuffling
hey,
something at the corner of the screen.
let's see what the cards are today. Okay. Passion.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
What do you got for passion?
Let me check the books.
Okay, fear is, so it's like this, right? We either like something with a passion, or we dislike it with a passion. And
Mm,
so fear is often just a passionate dislike of something
Oh.
as opposed to a passionate like of something.
Mm.
Okay, so now why is that relevant? Let me see. Why is that even relevant? Okay, read me kind of what the virtue of passion is, and let's see if we can see why this card has come up for us today.
As humans, we were born to embody passion. Few things can compare to the passion we feel for music, for art, for love. With the passion of conviction, embracing passion through the Creator becomes pure joy, while embracing passion with selfishness leads to destruction. Channel your passions with hope, love, kindness, courage, compassion, and wisdom, and you will soar.
Okay, so what I'm getting from what you read to me and kind of also what I'm channeling or connecting to is that we can either hold fears in our body, in our energy, or we can have passion for things that we want to do with our
Mhm.
life or with things that excite us and interest us. And so either we're going to hold the fear or we're going to hold the
Yeah.
passion. And the more we release our fears, the more we can actually invite things that we are passionate about, things
Yeah.
that create joy and excitement and motivation
And I
and
guess the link
fun.
is when you let go of fear, you are free. And when you have that freedom, then you're just now that empty vessel to allow, what is really truly your passion to come in.
Yeah,
Right? Yeah. Very
yeah,
nice.
absolutely.
Okay. I'm laughing because, these cards are really, really interesting that comes
Oh
up.
my God, completely. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
So I was actually saying that this topic could actually extend. We just shared a little bit about it, and
Yeah. Well,
I'm sure.
how
Hmm,
about we go into another topic and bring back fear another time around with a little bit of a different angle on it?
angle. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so next week I was thinking you want to do something on biohacking, on parenting. I mean, what do you guys want to hear? Drop it in the comments. Let us know what you want us to talk about. We can talk about anything because theta healing is so honestly, it is so all encompassing.
Yeah.
That's the word I want to use. Like it covers everything. This is why I love this technique so much because I could pretty much work on absolutely anything and talk about absolutely everything and find a way to show you the theta perspective on that.
And I don't think we'll ever run out of topics,
Oh my
right?
God,
So,
probably never. We
okay.
should
So,
totally have a podcast on theta.
yeah, a Theta podcast. I like it. But I mean, the name sounds really perfect anyway. So we'll stick to
Theta
Theta
talks.
Talks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Okay,
right.
cool.
Take care.
All right.
Bye.
See you guys.